Thank you, everyone. Arguably the best submachine gun ever made, and still one of the most widely used today. Obviously, we're talking about the Maschinenpistole 5. The Maschinenpistole 5 at first glance looks like just another submachine gun, but it has some mechanical solutions that make it truly unique. The submachine gun, they operate by blowback. In other words, when firing, what keeps the bolt in place is its own mass, inertia, and the recoil spring. The Maschinenpistole 5, on the other hand, uses a special system widely used by Heckler & Koch called roller-delayed blowback. Additionally, it fires from a so-called closed bolt, unlike most submachine guns, which use an open bolt firing cycle. What does open bolt mean? The bolt starts open, pulling the trigger, closes it, fires around, and returns it to open. The closed bolt cycle is the reverse. It fires, opens, then closes again. This whole roller-delayed system has a very long history and has an ancestor that we might not expect. The Maschinengewehr 42 uses a roller locking system. I'll show you a bit more closely what I mean by rollers when we disassemble it later. While experimenting with this system, Mauser noticed with the Maschinengewehr 42 that in some particular cases, essentially the bolt, we could say, would bounce and open by itself, which is something that a weapon with a bolt locking system shouldn't do. Mauser, experimenting with this concept, tried to create a weapon during World War II that could compete with the Sturmgewehr 44. This is how the Gerät 06 was born. The device 06, the Gerät 06H, used the system which wasn't exactly locked. Rather, the bolt would open by itself. Quite an innovative concept. In short, there was a play of angles and levers inside that kept the bolt closed or semi-closed. We could say until the pressure in the chamber dropped, at that point it would open by itself. It was a hybrid system, what we now call a blowback system. With delay, it's not strictly closed, but it has a delayed opening. These rollers essentially create a mechanical disadvantage, a lever we could say, that delays the opening of the bolt. What's the advantage? The bolt can be lighter this way, and the lightness of a weapon is very important. Also, the bolt's back and forth motion shifts the mass. And if it's lighter, I'll feel less recoil and the weapon will be much more controllable. After the war, the engineers essentially captured ended up first in France and then in Spain. Spain, I remember at the time, still had a regime, we would call it fascist, and there they continued the work on this system. In Spain, a roller-delayed system rifle called the SETME and its lighter version, the SETME LLIJERO, will be developed and adopted by the Spanish army. Meanwhile, in Germany, two former Mauser engineers, a certain Mr. Heckler and a certain Mr. Koch, founded the company of the same name and essentially became aware of this design. They already knew it from previous work, and seeing the developments that had been made by other people, whom they also knew. In Spain, they essentially copied the Spanish SETME. Thus, the famous G3 was created as the standard German army rifle and adopted by many other countries by scaling down the original. The Maschinenpistole 5 submachine gun was developed in the 1960s. It's very interesting because the Maschinenpistole 5 is essentially a miniature G3. But this whole story is very long and actually starts with the Maschinengewehr 42 and the story of this particular roller-delayed blowback system. The Maschinenpistole 5 has had many versions and remains probably the most widely used submachine gun today because it's really enjoyable to use. It's also a technological advancement over a blowback submachine gun. Let me move the camera and I'll show you up close how to use a Maschinenpistole 5 and how it works inside. As always, what are we looking at? We're looking a selective fire submachine gun, meaning it can fire both in semi-automatic and automatic modes. Just to be clear, the Maschinenpistole 5 models vary a lot. This one, in particular, has a safety that allows for both automatic and semi-automatic fire. Some others also have burst fire modes. The Maschinenpistole 5 offers various stocks, and you can activate them by pushing this lever. We could shorten it, for example, for transport. Personally, I prefer fixed stocks on weapons. You know that by now. These large grooves allow, in some models, to essentially make room for a stock. This is a very different stock. The entire Maschinenpistole 5 is basically a collage of various models. The whole bolt assembly is a fairly old model, but as you can see, some polymer parts have been changed and added. It's a hybrid with a mix of features. The fire selector is currently on safe. Single fire. To switch to automatic, we have to push the button that comes out on the other side to set it to automatic. It's a bit safer that way. This way you don't risk accidentally putting it into automatic fire under stress. Of course, we also have the trigger, the magazine release lever, and a 30-round magazine. The adjustable sights, a typical Heckler & Koch system where you turn them and can set them to 4 different distance levels. Moving forward, obviously the front sight and the charging handle. By turning it upwards, it allows us to keep the bolt open. The bolt is quite hard to operate because I still have to overcome the mechanical force of the rollers inside it. Now I'll open it up and show you more clearly what I mean by these rollers. Seeing them should make it clearer. I assure you that these systems, for me for example, when I was learning about weapons, were always a bit harder to understand than the mechanisms. Let's say with a normal lock, since there's a pretty precise play of levers, we could say there's not a solid and clear lock. To disassemble it, first we have to remove this pin, which also holds the stock. In fact, the stock will come off and allow us to rotate the trigger group downward. Here you go. The pin looks good, but you might sometimes have trouble with it. We'll see this more. This way you can remove the stock earlier. The recoil spring comes out. The trigger group here can rotate downward. This can also be changed or modified as you like. Let me remove the magazine as well. A firm pull on the charging handle removes the entire bolt group. Most of the bolt's mass is up here, while the bolt itself is just this small piece. Notice how it can move slightly on this piece, which we'll call a bolt carrier. Now these are the famous rollers. You can see that if I press them inside, the bolt moves slightly. This is how it would be closed. When the bolt carrier moves back, the rollers can retract. Now, when all of this is closed, so when there's metal around here, which is obviously the metal of the weapon, the pressure makes this want to move, but it has to overcome the mechanical resistance of the rollers, which are on an inclined surface, which I will show you now. When the rollers retract, everything else can basically move back. Now, by turning the shutter, here it is. Here, with its rollers retracting, and they come out and do this mechanical lever, we can notice this. Inclined surface. This is here, which being inclined, they present mechanical resistance to those rollers, essentially. The rollers have to retract by levering against this piece. As they retract, a lot of the energy from the shot is accumulated at this point. Once they've retracted, the whole system can move backward. Excellent! To reassemble it, of course, it's very simple because you just have to click. The rollers have to be retracted here. Just push everything inside. Once everything is inside, we reattach it. The stock. Sorry. But it's a bit stiff. I'll tell you, it's a bit stiff. I had to. Here. Here, I can replace the pin that secures everything, okay? I'd say it works. After all, there's only one way to check this thing, and that's to go shoot it. Not much. There was little grease. I like how they leave me here at this moment, since from here you can see, let's say, the reception. Well, give me an automatic weapon, I'll shoot myself because I feel like in Poland I should have a permit to do it. Do they trust me enough? That's real recognition. So we have the magazine, which obviously needs to be loaded, obviously. It's a 9mm weapon, just to clarify. And before you write it in the comments, the reason they're colored is because they're polymer rounds, which is the advantage. Well, there are several advantages. The main one is that they cost less. They buy them by the hundreds of thousands. They bought these because they were available and had a good price. All right, I have a bad guy ready. That is Persaglio. So it seems that the correct way to load it is to insert the magazine and then give it a firm hit. Don't ride the bolt forward gently. Alright, let's try some shots. First in semi-automatic. I really hate fixed stocks because they're too high. I should have it here, so I have trouble aiming, I'll tell you. I really dislike folding stocks. The fixed stock is much better. The grain is visible. Good. We all know you're not here to look at a semi-automatic weapon. Let's see. Let's see how it does. The magazine has some issues because... Does it jam? No. We might have issues because the magazine is loose. I'm trying to hold it at a slightly different angle to see if it works better this way. Unfortunately, often these things depend on the magazines. I'll tell you, I was expecting a slightly more reliable weapon. Yes. Problems? Okay, maybe the problems are caused by the charger because this part up here, as I said, is pretty old. And by the way, look, the release lever stays in position, which it shouldn't do. And the magazine, but what I managed to shoot, I'll definitely tell you, extremely controllable, extremely controllable. If they hadn't had problems, and I think it's a problem with this specific one, they said it has some issues. By the way, they warned me that if I want to shoot it, I can do it. But they don't guarantee that it's perfectly functional. Extremely pleasant, extremely controllable. The Maschinenpistole 5 is the submachine gun. There's nothing else to say. Compared to any other submachine gun, the trigger is much better. That doesn't happen. With an open bolt weapon, the first shot always has a clunk as the bolt moves forward. Whereas this one, using a closed bolt, is much easier to control. The sights are good. The weapon, essentially, since it recoils quite a bit in line, stays very stable. I like it. It's the king, hardly. I'll find something better. Well, what can I say? Thank you for watching this video. Me, from the Maschinenpistole 5. Now, we're probably going to go with the shooting range owner to disassemble it and discuss why it's not working so well. That's all. See you next time.